Hey bookworms, welcome back to my channel and to another list video. I really miss doing those, and this time again we'll be talking about book to movie adaptations. I already did a best and worst, I already did surprising adaptations, but today I will be talking about some of the most unique adaptations out there. Now, what do I mean by most unique? Well, usually making a book into a movie is a pretty straightforward thing. You take the plot of the book and rewrite it with some understandable changes to be visually and audibly presentable. But what happens when the book doesn't really have a linear plot, or when the scriptwriter decides to address the fact that this is a movie based on a book, or when the fact that this is fiction is the main point of the movie? Those are the kind of adaptations that I'll be talking about today. And if you have more ideas for unique adaptations, do share them below. By the way, I won't be including historical books that got a modern adaptations like Clueless or 10 Things I Most Hate About You. But without further ado, let's get started. Let's start, of course, with The Princess Bride. A year ago I did a video about movies that were better than the books, and I said one day I'll do a list about the most unusual book-to-movie adaptations, and this book and movie are definitely going to be there. So here we are. I bet you already know The Princess Bride, probably seen the movie, maybe even read the book. But the book itself was very unique in its approach because we have a very interesting narrative frame. William Goldman, who not only wrote the book but also the script to the movie, appears in his own book as a character. His insert character is telling a story called The Princess Bride, written by S. Morgenstern, a man who never actually existed, a story he allegedly heard in his childhood. This is a story of Buttercup, Wesley, Inigo Montoya, and all the rest, and throughout the book Goldman will interrupt the narrative with his own commentary. When it came the time to adapt the story into a movie, they decided to stick to the main story of Buttercup, but they did keep the narrative frame. This time we have Granddad Columbo, who is telling the story, again by the non-existing S. Morgenstern, to his sick grandchild, which caused so many people, me included, to believe that there is actually a book out there by S. Morgenstern by the same title. So yeah, that was indeed some unique way to tell a fairy tale. Moving on, the next entry is actually the newest on this list. It's Mike Flanagan's miniseries, The Haunting of Hill House, which was originally written by Shirley Jackson. So basically, this adaptation has very little to do with the original, but it's still a really good one. A lot better than Bly Manor in my opinion, the same director's adaptation to The Turn of the Screw. The reason I like this adaptation and decided to put it here is because this miniseries took the essence of the book and the names of both the characters and the author and made something completely different with it. The original book is about a few strangers who gather in a seemingly haunted house for an experiment, and the presence of the supernatural element raises the theme of a mental decline. I did a review on the book in the first week of Halloween. I'll link it if you're interested to know more details. But the miniseries is about a family who moves into the same haunted house and follows both what happens to them there and years later after a tragedy happens and the remaining of the family members have to face some horrible memories that some of them blocked. Now, let's remember that the book and the miniseries were written about half a century apart, and it's a great example of taking a subject like mental illness and discussing it in not only the ever-changing horror genre, but also through generational differences. Remember that the horror genre represents the societal fears of that time, so it would make sense to present them differently into different decades. The next entry is rather silly, and I admit I haven't read the book nor seen the movie, but surprisingly my husband saw the movie once on an airplane because he had nothing else to do, and he kindly told me what he remembered from it, and this is, I feel ridiculous saying it, what to expect when you're expecting. In case you didn't know, the book is a very famous guide for people who are experiencing pregnancies. It's a guidebook for parents-to-be. and they made a movie out of it. Granted, I think they only took the title because it's a famous one, but I figured I couldn't make a list like that and not include this title. The movie, in case you wondered, is a star-studded film about a few families who are expecting babies. It's a comedy, theoretically, even though I don't think that I would find it funny. My husband, who is as cynical as I am, said it was stupid, so take that as a warning. Also, it has Jennifer Lopez, and with all due respect, she appearing in a film is not really an indicator for an Oscar-worthy movie. So you know what? Let's just move on. Next, we have a very interesting case, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, a very underrated movie with Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer. It takes place in modern-day Hollywood, and it's basically about a petty thief who accidentally become a movie actor who, during his training with a real private investigator as research for his new role, find himself involved with a real murder mystery. In a nutshell, this movie is so much more, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend watching it. And it's also slightly based on a novel called Bodies Are Where You Find Them by Brett Halliday. The novel is a hard-boiled novel. Think of it like a book film noir, like Raymond Chandler's books. It's about a private detective during the 1930s, and I would tell you what this book is about, but the thing is that many of the book's elements were taken to the movie, and I feel like saying what the novel is about will probably spoil the movie. But Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, despite taking place in the early 2000s, has a very film noir-esque atmosphere, and there's even a subplot about a fictional hard-boiled author whom one of the characters is a huge fan of. Now, I said that I wouldn't include modern adaptations of historical novels, but that's not really what's actually happening here. Instead, they took a 1930s detective novel and made the general plot relevant to the present, if that makes sense. And besides, the movie is brilliant. Go watch it. Don't know about the book though, because I haven't read it. Moving on to the most meta entry, and also the most bizarre one because it's a Charlie Kaufman film. The aptly named Adaptation. Now, if you don't know who Charlie Kaufman is, he's a scriptwriter who wrote movies like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Being John Malkovich. In short, he's strange. Nicolas Cage plays Kaufman in this movie, and in addition he also plays another role, Donald Kaufman, Charlie's twin brother. Now in real life, Charlie Kaufman, who, if you got confused, is a real person, doesn't have a twin brother. Adaptation is about movie Charlie as he desperately tries to create a script to a film based on a book, The Orchid Thief. This is a book that again exists in real life. It's a non-fiction book by journalist Susan Rollins, who is also a real person and played by Meryl Streep in the movie if you needed any other reason to watch it. The Orchid Thief follows her investigation into the case of John LaRoche, also a real person, played by Chris Cooper in the movie, who was arrested after being caught poaching orchids in Florida. This movie is a little bit of behind the scenes into Hollywood, but also about the frustration of Kaufman as he's asked to do things that don't really make sense, like trying to make a non-fiction book into a fiction movie. If you are a fan of behind-the-scenes movies or are interested in filmmaking or just want to watch Kaufman's strangeness portrayed by a surprisingly calm Nicolas Cage, relatively, give this one a chance. But this movie isn't for everyone. I feel I had to include this movie here even though it's a bit of a cheat because it's not really an actual adaptation but about trying to adapt the book into a movie. But moving on, the next one is a fun one, and this is the movie Throw Momma from the Train, directed by the great Danny DeVito, starring him and Billy Crystal, which should be enough for some of you to want to watch the movie. Here's the funny thing. The movie is based on a novel, Strangers on a Train by Patricia Highsmith, which was actually already got a movie adaptation in the 50s by no other but the great Alfred Hitchcock. Both the original and the Hitchcock film are psychological thrillers about two strangers who both want to murder someone in their lives, and they make a plan, or one kind of forces the other one, but let's not split hairs, to switch murders in order to get away with it. A couple of decades later, Throw Momma Off the Train has basically the same plotline, but as a comedy, and it's hilarious. I don't know if it's recognized officially, but in the 80s they had this really goofy yet charming and fun comedies. A lot of them had Danny DeVito's, but I'm actually thinking of Undercover Blues, if you know it, as like a similar atmosphere in a movie. Anyway, this adaptation took a book, or maybe they were basing it on a movie, who knows, and despite leaving the main plot the same, turn it on its head by changing the genre. It actually kind of reminds me of Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow, which turned a gothic novel into a detective murder mystery, or, to a less extent, Jurassic Park, that turned an adult-oriented, very scientific book into a slightly scary yet family-friendly adventure movie. And last but not least, the modern classic, which was, for me at least, surprisingly good, although unfortunately it wouldn't make fetch happen, Mean Girls. As a person who has no patience for teenagers, who hates romantic comedies and rolls her eyes at chick flicks, I love Mean Girls. If you somehow missed it, Mean Girls is about Katie, the new girl in high school who was always homeschooled, and for the first time she has to deal with this craziness, which is high school, involving making friends, finding to which clique she belongs to, dealing with social pressure, having a crush on the cute guy, and of course, having frenemies. This movie was written by Tina Fey, who also stars in it as a teacher, and is actually based on a book called Queen Bees and Wannabes by Rosalind Wiseman. This is, again, a non-fiction. In fact, it's a self-help book for parents of teenagers, helping to explain to them the strange dynamics of teenage land. It mostly focuses on girls and the reality of cliques and mean girls. And I haven't read a book, but as someone who was in high school when the movie came out, I can tell you I loved how it portrayed high school life, especially considering that it was written by an adult. Obviously, everyone has different experiences, like I am not an American, so we don't have the whole prom king and queen thing. But teenagers are teenagers, and I really loved how all characters have some meanness in them. But they are also reacting to what's going on around them, and they all have some merits. Even Karen, whose breasts can tell when it's going to rain. Anyway, I saved this one for last because it's probably my favorite entry here. And if you like it, comment with your favorite Mean Girls quote in the comment section. And that was my list, bookworms. Thank you for watching it and sticking to the end. I hope you liked my choices, and of course, I'm curious to know which ones I missed. If you liked this video, please don't forget to click the like button and also subscribe to my channel, if you dare. Again guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye bye.